Hello and welcome to the ME7 Podcast for episode 25. We are going to start tonight on a bit of a sad note. As you've probably heard from the football club, the sad passing of Malcolm Steadman, the old kit man, was announced earlier this evening. We send all of our condolences to the Steadman family and we wish them all of the best for the very future. We couldn't go amiss from mentioning what a great servant he was to the football club, and obviously served under many managers, I think Martin Allen has told many a story about Malcolm. Certainly the one in France. If you haven't heard it, it was an outstanding story. He was a fantastic servant to obviously the football club. Served under many managers, and all Gills fans that knew him and come across him never had a bad word to say about Malcolm. And I'm glad the club have obviously recognised by it. They have announced that they are going to do a minute's applause or a minute's silence tomorrow. It's one of them tomorrow afternoon against Stevenage. The story, if you've not heard it, they were out in France. The Gills team under Martin Allen, and a player went down injured, and Martin turned around and saw who was about, and over his shoulder was Malcolm Steadman. And Malcolm said to Martin, "I'll join in to make up the numbers." Martin let him, and he jumped into a 7-a-side game between the players. He lasted about 5 minutes, and basically, collapsed on the floor because he'd run out of breath. And basically an ambulance was called and the whole lot. And as they got to the back of the ambulance, Malcolm would let up a fag, and basically was laughing and chuckling to himself. And that probably sums up the type of man he was. Is that he didn't take life too seriously, and he always put smiles on Gills fans' faces. So like I said, we send our condolences from everyone here at the ME7 Podcast to the Steadman family this evening, because obviously very, very sad news coming out. Matt, Owen, thank you for joining me this evening. Obviously it's not a nice way to start off any sort of podcast. Matt, we'll come to you first. What was your memories of Malcolm?
Do you know, I was lucky enough a fair few years ago to do some groundwork for the club during the season and go out and just basically do pitch repair. So I bumped into him quite a few times, and you know what, he was just one of the nicest blokes. He was a real club man as well. You know, he loved everything about the Gills. And you know, obviously a few years ago when he retired, you know, we all wanted him to stay because he sort of encapsulated everything that Gillingham is about. You know, obviously it's so very sad to hear that he's obviously passed away, and obviously my condolences go with his family at this very hard time.
Owen, he was one of the. He was effectively he was a club legend, wasn't he?
Yeah, one of the big mainstays of this football club. You know. I said on Twitter earlier, so no matter when you started following the club or how long you've been following the club, everyone who's been and around the club as long as Malcolm has, you've had an experience with him in one way or another at any point. You know, when I first started going, when I was 7, he was there. And obviously you get used to the surroundings when you're growing up going to watch your local team. You get used to the players, you get used to the managers, which obviously change a lot when you get older and things like that, such as squad rotation and whatever. But Malcolm was always one of those mainstays. He was always there all the time, and you'd always get used to him. He'd always go and speak to fans. He had a great rapport with, you know, basically every Gillingham fan. He'd always take time to speak to them, and he was, as you said, James, somebody who didn't take life too seriously. He's very much just. He's got a way of age, isn't he? He seemed to be the same age for his whole life, and then he passes that on to some of us when we get there. But some guy obviously loved his football, loved the club, and just enjoyed being where he was. So he says all you need to know that when Gills put out the tweet earlier, you had players from all different squads throughout the years, all paying their respects, all being really complimentary towards him. So it showed the effect he had in, you know, not just one dressing room, but numerous dressing rooms that we've had over the years. And, you know, obviously the stories of Martin Allen, obviously the other one, when I was lucky enough to speak to Martin, he was very complimentary about him, and he said about how, I think it was the Wimbledon game. I said to Martin, I was like, "What was your team talk before that game?" Because obviously it was a massive game for the club. He was like, "I didn't do it. Malcolm did it." No. So it shows the magic one person can have at a club, and obviously as you say, James, we send all of his best to his family, and hopefully we can all at the ground tomorrow pay our respects and show how much as a fan base we appreciated him and what he did for this club.
Yeah, 100%.
If I may say, I don't know if we've got to remember him for getting the kit against, wasn't it, Millwall? That was what I call definitely a Malcolm moment. But yeah, he will live long in Gill's fans' memories.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, and hopefully the Gills players can give him a fitting performance tomorrow afternoon against Stevenage. Yeah, obviously we've not managed to catch up since Crewe last Saturday. It was a 1-1 draw for the Gills. Initially, it come up that it was Scott Kashket that had got the goal. It wasn't Scott Kashket; it was Mandron that headed the Gills in front, only to then be pegged back, and we took a point away back to Kent. Yeah, Matt, obviously against a side that had come down from us or with us last year. The front two of us played from last year in Mikel Mandron and Scott Kashket, but it's another sign of positivity, isn't it? Obviously off the back of the win, obviously the week before. So obviously then against Sutton, and then to follow it up with a point. It's showing slow signs of progress, isn't it, for this dual side?
Absolutely. I hate to quote the old cliches, Rome wasn't built in a day and all that, but yeah, it has. It's been a very, very slow process, and it's not going to magically turn around tomorrow. We're not going to turn around and score 50 goals tomorrow. It has been a slow process, but you can start to see the team bonding, the team kind of instinctively knowing where runs are being made, where the pass is going to be. I think you're starting to get the looks, especially Will Wright in the last few games has really come on strong. Shea Alexander's really come on strong. Players that at the start of the season we were moaning about, but there really does seem to be a good team there. Is it a team that's going to get us pushed right up and maybe challenge for the playoffs coming in the season? I don't know. Mid-table, hopefully, but we have got the basis of, I think, a good team that you're starting to see now, and goals will come, I'm sure.
Yeah. Harris mentioned in the week that he's starting to be able to pick a side that he can pick consistently. He doesn't have to make too many changes. Do you think that's a factor? Do you think that's played in the fact that we've slowly started seeing the performances turn and become more consistent?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, you've got some players who are knocking at the door a bit. I think Lewis Walker is probably the main example of that, because pepperoni pizza, whatever it is or whatever, is coming out of those games with good compliments on the manager or assistant, wherever is there on the day. I think that's his 3 goals he scored in 2 games now, isn't it, in that competition? So he's been knocking at the door. Yeah, I think the consistency is at the beginning of the season and the first, certainly first 8 games, we seem to not know what our best team was. There was a lot of chopping and changing. Naturally, we've had injuries involved in that. Also, some changes are forced, of course. But if we can, as we've been doing the past few league games, get a solid team that know how to play with each other, they get used to playing with each other, then there can be a build-up of cohesiveness on the pitch that can lead to better performances. I'm sure for us players, it's not ideal, obviously, where you're playing in a team one week and then you've got different players around you next week, albeit you're playing with them in training all week. It's a lot different when you're on the pitch doing it. But yeah, I think we saw a fairly solid performance on Saturday. I don't think it was, from what I saw of it, the best game. It seemed like when I was refreshing Twitter on a Saturday in the second half, it didn't seem like anything was really happening at either end. To sort of just petered out to a stalemate, which on the face of it isn't too bad a point. I think other than the goal we did score, I think McDonald flashed one just wide, didn't he? He's another one who's part of that somewhat stable starting 11 at the minute. Obviously, Oda's come back to forfeit, so it's good to see him back as well. And I think, I said after the window finish, I said the main thing we can do is try and get to a point where come January where we can potentially dip into the market again, where we're a good distance away from the bottom, which even then I didn't think was going to be a problem, but it's turned out to be a little bit of one at the start of this season. And if we're in the top half, which would be lovely, or within touching distance, and we can use January to sort of make that next push. I don't think we're making the playoffs this year, no, but I think it does give us an opportunity to sort of reset a little bit in January and then see where we can go from there. But at the minute, it's looking like a lot more of a fluid Gillingham side than we've seen for the vast majority of the season so far.
Yeah, it's interesting, Matt, isn't it, that the players that have come under heavy criticism in the early part of the season are the ones that have shown the most character in terms of Will Wright and Shea Alexander and Alex McDonald and people and obviously Lewis Walker as well. He's obviously putting himself in the hat. They're players that are showing an enormous amount of character considering the amount of criticism they received, and I think quite rightly received at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. But then I think that a lot of credit has to go to probably someone, probably Neil Harris himself, who will, take these players to one side and say, look, what do these guys know? They're not professional footballers. They're a couple of players. I'll be honest. I was probably on the back of Shea Alexander probably the most, thinking because he looked on paper like he could be a very good player. And the first couple of games that we saw from him, I did not see that. I didn't see the potential of the player that he could have been. That being said, the last 2 games I've seen him play, I've been thoroughly impressed. He's kind of made that right back position his own. The one who, at the start of the season, I think at the moment, I think is probably becoming one of our key centre backs, being Will Wright. Again, he had a couple of dodgy games, but I don't know again what Harris has done. Probably taken him to one side again and whispered something nice in his ear. And look at the performances that he's had. He's for me at the moment. I think him and Elkin Baggett are going to probably be the key pairing centre back. After what I saw on Tuesday night, I thought they were excellent together. And I think that's a sort of strong partnership there that could grow throughout the rest of the season if we can keep it consistent.
Yeah, I mean, you briefly mentioned about Lewis Walker. He's not doing himself any harm in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net and finally putting the ball in the right back of the net. But yeah, he's not doing himself any sort of harm, isn't he? Is he?
No, I'll big up Walker. I will add to what Matt was saying in terms of I actually think Max Amer's done really well recently as well. I think you probably make a back catalogue of how many times I've had to slate Max Amer in recent years. But I do think, he has actually turned up and improved quite a lot in recent weeks. He's been a part of a key defence that hasn't been breached too many times since the Mansfield game, so it's positive. In terms of Lewis Walker, I know, as I said earlier, people can label it and say, oh well, he's only scored in the that cup. But to be honest, you look at his movement for. I'm trying to think of which game was which now. I think the one he scored twice was Brighton, wasn't it? I think, yeah. Yeah, he's run to get on into Mandron's cross for the first goal. Lovely finish right in the bottom corner. His header on Tuesday night, I thought was a brilliant header. A little flick at the near post right into the bottom corner. And he's not doing himself any favours at all. He's doing, it's like he's doing what he should be doing, and he's giving Neil Harris something to think about, which is something we didn't think he would be able to do for the majority of the season because we looked at where he came from, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. Saw he came from the 4th division of Italy. Didn't really believe what Harris was saying about chasing him for 4 weeks, but he is making an impact. Obviously, we've seen when he's come off the bench in some games, he's done well. The Walsall game where he nicked it for us at the death and hit the post. Made a couple of half chances for himself in the game against Sutton. He certainly did more than Mandron did in that game for the 5 or 10 minutes he was on the pitch. And I think the problem with Walker is not anything to do with him personally. It's more just the way we play. You sort of need that big man up there, which in a sense, despite how poorly he has played for the majority of the season, makes Mandron slightly undroppable, which I don't really agree with. You're going to have Cash on the left And it looks like McDonald at the right at the minute. Green's barely getting in at the minute, so it is a bit of a tough one for Lewis. He seems to be someone that's relied on when we might need to nick a goal and we put it up top. He did start a league game recently, didn't he? I think at home. I think it might have been the Mansfield game potentially, and that game everyone was off it and he couldn't really get into the game, so I won't put too much on him there. But he is someone that I think will be able to offer us something this season. I would like to see him get more starts than he is. It's just about how we're going to fit him in without changing formation, which might be the issue. And maybe we could set something out tomorrow potentially with both of them. I know it might be easy to say it didn't work when we put it up top against Mansfield, but I think that was more of a case of we were just terrible that day, and when you're 2 goals down, chasing the game is never going to be easy. But it's definitely someone I'm interested to see a bit more of, hopefully from a starting berth.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, Matt, isn't it? Because obviously last week on Saturday that Mikel Mandron gets his goal that he so desperately wanted. Scott Kashket is causing all sorts of problems for defences, and I think he's been one of our shining lights in recent weeks. So I guess when it comes to league, it's almost difficult for Neil Harris to justify putting Lewis in, isn't it? Even though he's doing so well.
If you look at it, experience versus youth, Mandron has got the experience, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's going to be one of the first names down on the team sheet. But like every footballer, one day it's your game, the following game it's not your day, and so I would say it's hard to drop Mandron at the moment. That being said, I do feel that Walker deserves that shot. I've said it for the last few weeks. If you watch back some of the podcasts, I would have liked to have seen him start last week and actually have Mandron come on as an impact sub. I think that would have been a slightly better attack. But the only way I could see it working at the moment is if Harris was to change tactics, maybe play something like a 3-4-3 and have Walker and Kashket playing off of Mandron. But then again, who do you drop? Do you want to go soft at the back and have 3 at the back? No, you really want to shore up your defence. I think 4 at the back works for us. So then do you go to 3 in midfield? Well, then who do you drop in midfield? It's such a tough workaround. And actually, I think it's kind of a nice thing for Chills fans to feel this, because previous seasons, the starting 11, 99% of the times picked itself due to injuries and players just not being good enough. But at the moment, we're arguing who should start in this position, and I think that's a luxury for us Jules fans at the moment.
Yeah, and it must be for Neil Harris, isn't it? I mean, after weeks of having his forwards not score or not impact games, he's now having all 3 of them do it in all different games through either their willingness to run, their willingness to create chances for others, or put the ball in the back of the net. It's a nice headache for Harris to have.
Yeah, it is. It's something that we've been frustratingly lacking for the majority of the season, and we've been wanting to see. We know Kashket has that raw pace. We know Mandron on his day can be a menace. He can get his head onto it and use his strength. We haven't seen that enough. Green, we know what he can do, explosive pace as well on the right hand side, a bit of trickery, and Walker's got the most goals out of all of them actually, I think. But given it's only in the Papa John's Trophy, but still they all count. It's a good headache to have. I think I'd be surprised if he does change anything at the minute, because we are 4 games unbeaten, aren't we? So it wouldn't make sense, like us supposed to change it just yet. But it's good to have options where you can rely on each player to bring you something. Whereas at the start of the season, it was more of a, we'll take this person out, put this person in, and just hope something happens, rather than we'll bring this person on now because we know he can make an impact because he's done it before. So, I'm sure it's been frustrating for Neil Harris having to wait so long to get that sort of response from his team, but now he's got it. It's a good headache to have. And obviously, back further on the pitch, we've got some more options now with Don Jeffries has come out of hibernation. It's nearly Christmas time. He's like the midfield Michael Bublé. But it's good to see him get some minutes. Matt, I don't know if you went to the... did you go on Tuesday, the Papa John's game?
No, I watched it from home.
You watched it? Okay. So out of interest, because I've not actually seen any of his games yet, apart from the first 45 Wimbledon, what was Jeffries like in that game, for my ask?
he was quiet. He was kind of. I'm trying to think of the best way of wording it. It wasn't his best game, I don't think at all. It's not going to be his defining game for Gills. It was kind of like he was finding his feet again. That's kind of what it felt to me. When he did get the ball, he was looking up, he was controlling it well, passing the ball out wide, which was really nice. He did make a couple of good runs, but the Don Jeffries that I saw in the first couple of games, before obviously the injury, that wasn't the Don Jeffries on Tuesday night. I kind of think Harris has probably said to him, look, don't go 100%, maybe 75% tonight. He for me, if when O'Keefe comes back, I think I'd still want to go Don Jeffries. So from what I've seen on when I've watched some of his previous videos when he was at the Brentford B team, I think I'd be starting him over O'Keefe. He's a very sort of similar O'Keefe kind of player, but yeah, it wasn't his best game. But there are glimpses there of a player that I think Gills are going to come to really love.
Okay. Yeah, Owen. Obviously after recent results after the Mansfield game, I think we've been unbeaten since the Mansfield game.
Win against Sutton, beat Sutton, beat Brighton, drew a Crewe. Technically won on Tuesday, but I suppose it's a draw, really, isn't it? So.
Yeah. Have we turned a corner? Do we feel we've turned a bit of a corner?
It's a bit too early to say, I think, on that one, because I think you have to appreciate that we're playing, the two Papa John's game is what they are. No one cares about it. But, Sutton were really poor. Crewe, I think they've not won in a long time as well. Well, they've got one win in 10 or something like that, I heard before. Their game last week, and obviously that didn't get taken away from them last week, did it? Because we obviously took something away from them. But
yeah.
So I think, I was about to say, we need a really big test, and tomorrow is obviously the biggest test you're going to get at this moment in time, isn't it? So I suppose if we can come out tomorrow's game with something, considering how well Stephen have just started, the free scoring, then that would bring even more confidence that despite the start we've had, if we can get something against top of the league, then we're clearly going in the right direction. So I think that's probably the question more for Monday's episode, potentially.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Obviously, I mean, you mentioned it there. Obviously, Stevenage are the visitors to Priestfield tomorrow afternoon, and a certain Mr. Steve Evans is going to be bringing his side down to Priestfield. Well, I for one will be giving him a good reception because I think he, up until his latter parts of the job in ME7, I think he did an excellent job as Gills manager. Obviously, 2 10th place finishes, and we all kind of know why it went wrong when he got the sack in around about March time, late March time. Matt, what sort of reception will you be giving the big man tomorrow?
Right up until kickoff. I'll give him a nice round of applause for what he did for us for the first 2 seasons. I think was incredible. He got a couple of really good signings. Jordan Graham, Big V. He got Dempsey down. These were players that we sort of didn't imagine getting. And for 2 seasons, I thought he did an absolutely brilliant job. For me, the only black mark on his glittering Gills career that he had with us would be the game against West Ham, where I sat behind the dugout and I was appalled by how he treated a certain player on that game. And I did lose a little bit of respect for him for that. But apart from that, he took my team. He kept us in League 2 in League 1, for those 2 seasons. And yeah, in the 3rd season, obviously things just didn't work out. But no hard feelings. He didn't get us relegated. But yeah, I'll give him a nice warm applause up until about 2:45.
Mm-hmm. Owen, I can't imagine there is going to be a nice reception for him. No, is there? Knowing the Gills fan base.
Well, I'm not so sure, to be honest, because I think what's happened at the start of this season, with, everyone knows about the budget now, what's happened with Scally, where he's gone along. I think people are opening their eyes a bit more to the bigger picture and what really is, or who I should say, really is to blame for where we are at the minute. And I think maybe that's changed people's perspective a bit on not just last season, but the two before. I get people dislike Evans for personal reasons aside from football. He's an interesting character because when he's on the touchline, he's barbaric, he's loud, he's angry. But when you speak to him one-to-one in person, he's a lovely bloke.
Yeah,
he's like a schizophrenic. But I think you need to look at it as 2 10th place finishes. I believe that's our best finishes since the Edinburgh era. Well, I think we finished 9th, didn't we? In a season we really should have gone up, but that's besides the point. Yeah, especially doing it behind closed doors as well, with probably a lower budget than we do now because of all the constraints. He's not been shy to say a few things in the lead up to the game. He said he's got loads of friends at Gillingham except one person. I wonder who that is. But I listened to his preview on the Stevenage YouTube channel, and he was really complimentary towards us. Said he's got a lot of friends down there. Said he was really complimentary towards the fans. He's actually put out a statement today regarding Malcolm as well. It's come from Stevenage's Twitter. I can't remember it off by heart, but I think it was something about enjoying all the times they had together and stuff like that. So, it's a nice touch for him. I'll be giving him a round of applause because I appreciate that we had 2 great seasons under him. It's obviously a shame that one of them we didn't get to see, obviously, where we were, seemingly getting a good result every week. And, you'd chop your arm off for that now, wouldn't you? But
yeah,
I think, as I said, a lot of what's happened since he's left has sort of opened people's eyes a bit to the idea that maybe he wasn't the problem, so to speak, and that to get us 2 10th place finishes was actually really impressive considering the lack of budget we had. And I think we had a discussion a few podcasts ago. I think it was when Scally disappeared. Not disappeared, he's not hidden away somewhere, he's just gone. And I said about how what did I say? No, I said about how when the budget wasn't there for Evans, that's where after we finished 10th back to back, you've got to be looking to invest into the club to make that next step, because we were close to the playoffs in the first season when it got curtailed by COVID, and we ended up, I think we actually finished 9th, didn't we, on a technicality or something that year.
Like
the second year we were 10th, I think, not too far out of the playoffs, but not ridiculously close either. But I would have said that would be the time where you look at it and say we've had 2 of our best seasons in recent memories. Now's the time to back the manager and try and make that next step. We didn't do that. It obviously ended up with some signings who didn't set the world alight. We ended up looking down the barrel at League 2 where we are now. And as I think we've said before, James, one-to-one conversations, he'll go to another job and he'll get them. But I didn't say I'd get Stevenage up to, I didn't think he would, but he's doing a good job of it at the minute. And, it shows that he is a good manager and that perhaps the problems weren't all down to him, which is something I think people are opening their eyes to a bit. So I hope the reception's not bad. I hope it's, if anything, in the middle, but I'll be cheering him personally.
Respectful is I think the word jest. But like Matt said, after come 3 o'clock, he is the opponent that Gills do face, and they are high-flying, free-scoring, a team that, Gills have to obviously face tomorrow. But Neil Harris is relishing it, and he obviously said in his pre-match press conference earlier this week that these are the games that you want to be playing in as a manager and players. You want to be playing the best teams, and you relish coming up against them. Like Owen said earlier, Matt, if we go and get something out tomorrow, that will give the squad of players and Neil Harris a huge, huge confidence boost in the coming weeks, won't it?
Yes, it will. I mean, look, if we win 1-0 and we play absolutely terribly, that's not going to give us a confidence boost. But what I will say is against Steve Evans, Stevenage tomorrow, that if we play like the Gills team that we should be, that we should be at Priestfield with all that passion and heart, and we lost 1-0, but we could see signs of a growing team, then I think there's a lot of hope for the rest of the season. I'm not saying that we're going to get into the playoffs, but I think we could at least get high mid-table. But it all depends on the game. I've said it once before, what Gill's team turns up. And that being said, I'm going to go give you my score prediction now, but I've got a feeling tomorrow's going to be a thriller of a game. With everything that's happened, and I'm actually going to tell you, I think Gill's going to win 3-2.
That is a bold shout. I mean, I've got a feeling you're not going to go for that.
Obviously it's going to be a really difficult game. They're top for a reason. I don't necessarily think they've got a team that is top of League 2 calibre, but they've got a manager who certainly knows how to do it. Yeah, it's going to be really difficult, isn't it? They're not there by fluke. Their home record is ridiculous if you look at it. They've had some dodgy results away. They limped through to beat Crewe. They lost 3-0 at Bradford. They lost at Mansfield. So there is reason for optimism in that sense, that they've not been flawless on the road as they've been at home. So I'd be looking at that and thinking, well, away from home they can be got at, and we can try and make the most of it and see what damage we can cause them. I think in terms of score prediction, I know it's not exactly what we need at the minute, but given the opposition and given the slight run we're on at the minute, and as I said, they're not flawless away from home. If we can impose ourselves, get them under the cosh, I think we could come away with this game with 1-1 draw, which is going to be my prediction. Be 1-1, which okay. I know we don't want draws, we need wins, but on the basis against a team top of the league wouldn't be a bad point, I don't think. Yeah,
very true. Okay, that's the end of tonight. I know it's a little bit shorter, but that is the end of this evening. Thank you all for watching. The Gills do take on Stevenage as Steve Evans returns to Priestfield, with obviously the sad news of Malcolm Steadman peacefully passing away earlier this morning. The Gills will have a club legend watching over them over that Rainham end, as Neil Harris can see if East Gills side can carry on the unbeaten run that they're currently on. For now, good night.